Now, the DA leadership race in the Western Cape is heating up after the surprise resignation of Mayor Patricia de Lille as the provincial leader in the powerhouse province. In her letter of resignation to DA national leader Mosi-Maimane, de Lille said she wanted to focus on her mayoral duties, to which she could not do justice while she was provincial leader as well. Meanwhile, 4 names are reportedly in the race to take over de Lille's job in what is likely to be a bruising battle in the months ahead. So, who all are in the fray? Media reports suggest 4 key names who are in the DA leadership race. First in the lineup is Bonginkosi Matigizela. He is the current deputy leader of the DA in the Western Cape, but was a member of the ANC before he joined the Democratic Alliance. He also is the current MEC for Human Settlements in the Western Cape provincial government. Now, media reports suggest that Leonard Max is DA's Shadow Minister of State Security. He was elected to the Western Cape Legislature in 2004, in 2007, 2010, and as late as in 2015, he tried to bid for the DA provincial leader's post, but was unsuccessful. Next in line is Wilmot James, who is presently the Shadow Minister of Health and a Member of Parliament for the DA. He even served as a DA federal chairperson from 2010 to 2015. Previously, James contested for the position of DA national leader, but lost to Mosi-Maimane. Lastly, the name of Masizo Zole Mnasela is also being bandied about for the position. He is currently serving as chairperson of the Standing Committee on Local Government in the Western Cape Legislature. Mnasela earlier served as a Member of Parliament from 2009 to 2014. And now in studio, we're joined by Tshepo Kgadima, political analyst. A very good evening to you, and thank you so much for your time.
Good evening.
And now, this week's allegations of leadership battle in the Western Cape, fueled by the resignation of provincial chair Patricia de Lille, who quit to focus on her role as mayor of Cape Town. What does this mean for the DA now?
Jeff, very interesting times, and taking into account that Mayor Patricia de Lille has recently elected to the position of DA Western Cape and the leader of the DA Western Cape. So it's very surprising that not even 2 years into the job, she's already now decided that she's not going to proceed. Well, the question has to be asked. But one thing it tells us is that she's out of the premiership race come 2019. Because most certainly she will not be eligible for that. And that, I think the big question mark goes to the current Premier of Western Cape, Helen Zille. It would appear that pretty much she's much in the running and she wants to continue to be in charge. I mean, of the potential candidates and the names that have been thrown around, unless Helen Zille specifically, categorically declares that she is not available to serve as Premier of Western Cape come 2019. And chances are that when you look at the Western Cape politics, they have got a very good chance of retaining the province as the leading party or the governing party. And with Helen Zille still in the mix, that is going to complicate things. So effectively, my reading is that any one of the 4 or so contenders that have been named, their names have been thrown around, they will become nothing but glorified clerks as leaders of the Western Cape DA. And they will not really have the power and influence. And it would appear to me that that's pretty much the difficulty that Mayor Patricia de Lille was faced with, that even though she was leader of DA Western Cape, but she didn't really have much say or influence in what the Premier of the province was doing, or any influence in terms of the party thinking of how it should go. But we should read that in context, because the Democratic Alliance, when you look at their constitution, pretty much you've got a thing called the Federal Executive, Federal Council, that wields so much power, yet in terms of the manner in which that power is to be exercised is not expressly defined, which makes it difficult, because it means that they are making the rules as they go along, and yet they are this most powerful structure of the Democratic Alliance. So that, I think, is going to create challenges as the Democratic Alliance is trying to grow into being truly a national party that is across all the provinces, and how they're now, in terms of the governing of the various metros where they're doing so in coalition, they're going to have some difficulties unless, I think, they start to really clearly define the process of how leaders come in, how leaders are eligible to be elected and how they are elected, but also what powers and authority do such leaders have. We saw a situation in this case that, as I say, Mayor Patricia de Lille, when you look at the constitution, even the provincial constitution, they've got this very weird arrangement whereby you've got the constitution of the Democratic Alliance, but the provinces are to go and have their own constitutions, which to some degree defines what such constitution should contain, but by and large such constitution is determined in an arbitrary process by the federal executive or the federal council. So that is making it difficult. So I can see the difficulty why Mayor Patricia de Lille has resigned. I can't see how she could have held course in being leader of a province where they are governing and she didn't really have any influence or say. Logic would have said that in order not to create two centers of power, because effectively they had two centers of power, in order not to create two centers of power, Patricia de Lille would then ordinarily have had to move into the spot of being Premier of the Western Cape, but I don't think that is something that Premier Helen Zille wants to do in a hurry.
And let's talk about one of the four that have come up, Bonginkosi Madikizela. Do we see some kind of support coming from the DA party for him to take on the role for provincial leadership permanently?
Mission impossible. In fact, when you look at all those names there, I think that probably the person that might have a good chance might be Leonard Max. When you look in terms of his history in the Democratic Alliance, and again, it's a question of they still have this difficulty whereby we must remember that the Democratic Alliance is actually an alliance of the old Nationalist Party and the old Democratic Party, and later on they were joined by a splinter group from the Pan-Africanist Congress led by Patricia de Lille, to then have what is known as the Democratic Alliance. And those are some of that's the historical factors that they don't seem to be wanting to discuss openly and admit that it poses a big problem. So you end up with this element of suspicions. So if anything, within the Democratic Alliance, there are factions, because there are those people that are seen as loyal to Helen Zille, and Helen Zille will be seen as a true Democratic Party person, who then effectively Democratic Alliance is running on the values and the policies and the ethos of the Democratic Party. It just changed the name, but it's effectively the Democratic Party. And for as long as they see all others that have joined them, be that the old Nationalist Party, the National Party, or the Independent Democrats, by and large, those have come in, actually have been assimilated. If anything, they don't have their own independent identity, or they did not bring in any of their policy flavor or political ideology that one would have thought. I mean, if you look at Patricia de Lille in terms of a Pan-Africanist roots, we don't see that at all. We see that the Democratic Alliance is pretty much a pure neoliberal political party in ideology, be it on politics, economy, and everything else. So her Pan-Africanist roots have been lost. So most of the things that you would have said that Patricia de Lille, the flavor that she could have brought into Democratic Alliance to make it truly a South African party that takes into account the very unique circumstances that this country is in terms of its demographics, that has been lost. So that's the one thing. And on the other hand, the Nationalist Party, by and large, I'm not so sure how long those that really were pure Nationalist Party voters, who, it doesn't matter how long they've been on the scene, they are still pretty much, onlookers and bystanders in how the Democratic Alliance is running and functioning, really, as I say, based on what the Democratic Party was. And those are, as the Democratic Alliance is starting to gain stature and having more people voting for them, and now even having people who are former ANC leaders provincial or local, who are now joining the Democratic Alliance and getting into leadership position, they are already coming into a very polluted political space in as far as ideology is concerned. So the question becomes that have they forgone all that which they had professed to believe in before, that they are now neoliberal in totality? Or are they going to try and bring in that flavor of the political ideology that they've come from? They are going to find it very difficult to hold course, because by and large, when we see the manner in which the Democratic Alliance or the Democratic Party traditionally elected leaders, that to this day still stands, is a very opaque manner in which, well, how do you actually become eligible for, unless you are approved by a select group of people, the aristocracy within the Democratic Alliance, it is mission impossible. You don't really get in by popular vote. So the Democratic Alliance, by and large, I would liken it to the situation in the United States in terms of the electoral college system and the popular vote, whereby even within the Democratic Alliance, you can have the popular appeal and popular vote, but you will lack that electoral type system that they really are pretty much based on, whereby leaders effectively are anointed by this aristocracy, which is very much behind the scenes, but wields so much power and influence. And hence, you can see that Premier Helen Zille has not denied that she's considering to perhaps go and contest for the position of Western Cape leader, because pretty much that's where they are confident that they can solidify their voting and continue to be in governance, therefore. And it would appear that Premier Helen Zille still very much wants to be on the scene for many more years to come, and hence she says she's available.
And now there are allegations that de Lille's resignation has a lot to do with the simmering economy between the Premier Helen Zille and her. Does this reflect poorly on the internal democracy in the DA party?
Well, as I say, they have not specified what powers and functions actually, when you are a provincial leader, you actually have in regard to how the province run. And of course, they are the governing party in Western Cape. So they would have been difficult. I can't imagine, I mean, I don't know if you can, a Helen Zille who would take instructions from a Patricia de Lille. It's a complete no-no. And we shouldn't be surprised that what is alleged that Mayor Patricia de Lille was frustrated in that she had the position, but she didn't have the power and the authority that goes with the position. And the reasons that she advances for her early, unexpected resignation, surely, in my opinion, they just don't hold water, because they don't really make that sense. You have to understand that if this is a party that understood the politics, at least in Western Cape, on the account of what the African National Congress was not doing, it was clear that the Democratic Alliance will continue to be the dominant force in Western Cape politics. Therefore, when she went for that position as the DA Western Cape leader, it should have occurred to her, by and large, that most certainly the DA will therefore be in the Metro as the governing party without any coalition howsoever. As I say, predicated on what the African National Congress was not doing. African National Congress continues to be dysfunctional in Western Cape, and that has become really a boon for the DA in terms of Western Cape politics. So why would it happen that Mayor de Lille had not foreseen that therefore there would be this conflict? And now saying that, well, she actually wants to concentrate on things that are much more. Some of the things that they're saying don't really make sense, like, well, we want to create jobs. Again, on policy, the Democratic Alliance is a neoliberal party. It therefore means that it's a hands-free, autopilot government, whereby the private sector really has to, if they wish, has to have minimal rules that they have to comply by, and has to pretty much do everything else. So I can see how even the mayor in this case can be saying that, look, I want to create jobs for the city of Cape Town, because she doesn't have the tools and the mechanics to be able to achieve such a goal, purely because of the party where she comes from. It is not possible to even say that I can create jobs without first hoping that there is a private sector. And by and large, you find it very difficult for them to define and quantify jobs in what areas and who are going to be the investors in that field, since even at the local level, at the metro, they will not be the investor in creation of such jobs. So I just find it that I think the party, as the year goes by, they are going to now start to have to face some of these challenges that the ANC has been facing. Factions. And factions purely because how long can the Democratic Party ethos and ideology be the center stage of the Democratic Alliance? And for as long as that is the case, they are going to battle.